Welcome back to Start the Conversation, everybody. I'm your host, Dalton. I'm here at our inpatient facility, Hidden Oaks in Chatfield, Texas. We are recording this from our studio today, and I have a guest coming all the way from where?
I'm in Houston,
All
Houston,
the way from
Texas.
Houston. And so he's a few hours south of us, but we were able to connect today and bring y'all this podcast. So I hope you enjoy it. This is an alumni from way back when, um, Douglas. So uh, Doug, tell us. You told us you're from Houston, but is that where you're from, and how long have you been sober?
No, I moved here 5 years ago to continue my education, and I'm from Cairo, Georgia originally. It's a little old small town of about 20,000 people. I walked into the doors of treatment center on March the 3rd of 2018. So as my therapist used to say, as long as the creek don't rise, next month I'll have 8 years of continuous sobriety. So that's it's crazy to think of that. My best friend and I were just talking about that yesterday. Woo boy, what a
Nice. Awesome. Well, it's good to have you with us today, and we're
it's good to
gonna
be here.
we're gonna talk about your story. We're gonna talk about your insight, your knowledge into the addiction realm, and
Gonna
I
get
hope
into it.
this podcast offers somebody out there some hope. It gives somebody some wisdom, and maybe it'll give somebody the courage to reach out for help. You can reach out to us at Resolutions Healthcare. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. You can go on the web to resolutionshealthcare.com and read all about us. But
You
reach
guys
out.
are everywhere these days.
Seven. All right, let's dig into it.
Boy, it was interesting, I tell you. And I just my wife and I weren't sure if we were going to, if I was going to apply for PhDs another year, if I was going to give it one more try or not. And that really solidified us because, for me to go out in the workforce and to see treatment centers, what I call kicking the can down the road kind of thing, right? They
Yeah.
get them in the building, get their money from the federal and state governments, require the basic, uh, kind of bare minimum. And then if they're not receptive to your treatment model, you just hang on to them for as long as you can so you can keep cashing your checks.
Right.
And, these people were leaving these treatment centers and they weren't any better off than what they were.
No. Yeah,
So
it's a
it really kind
problem.
of solidified for me. It is. It really is. It makes me think back, right, to the beginning of my journey and how I know for a fact that God was putting me in exactly the right places because I didn't know that there was a world out there that took advantage of the system in the recovery world until I had been sober for 3 years, really. I mean, I had a great inpatient center. I had great outpatient. I had an amazing recovery community when I went back home out after treatment. Great sober living. You know, uh, that's just not the case for everyone. You know what I mean? In recovery, I learned can be much tougher than what it was on me.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
Yeah, God definitely showed you favor the way you were able to come in and get it and move on.
yeah, for sure.
Cuz I
Well, I'm
think
glad to
were
be here, Dalton.
were
I
you were you one time and done in
I
treatment?
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I'll be honest with you. I spent my entire life from 15 years old until I was 37 years old thinking not that I had a problem. To be honest with you, it never crossed my mind. It never crossed my mind that I was an alcoholic or an addict, that I had a substance use disorder. I knew something was wrong with me. I started to know that something was wrong with me, like at a fundamental level, about a year and a half or 2 years before the world came crashing in on me. And I remember going to my father-in-law, who is this giant figure of a man, 6'6", 275, 300 pounds. I mean, just this really intimidating man. And having this really vulnerable moment with him, he looked me dead in my eyes one day and said, "Boy, what is wrong with you? Every time I turn around," and I was like, "Alan," I said, I don't know, but something's wrong with me. I just can't get it right." And, that conversation kind of ended there, but it stuck with me. It lingered on me. It weighed on me. A couple years later, when my then wife, she moved out, and she'd been gone a week, and I didn't even know she was gone.
Really?
Yeah, I called her up after about a week. I said, "Where are you?" And she was like, she's like, I told you a week ago, I moved back in with my parents. I can't put up with your stuff anymore.
Wow.
And that's how deep into it I was, is I didn't even know she was gone.
Man.
But, and even then I didn't understand. I didn't know, I still couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I started to ask the questions like, what is so bad about me that everybody and everything in my life keeps going away?
How old are you at this point?
I'm 37 years old, and I've had what most would consider a very successful career. I had been given every opportunity in the world to succeed, and at every turn, kind of like the big book says, every time something big came up in my life that could really have a positive impact, I just somehow found a way to destroy it. And I spent a good couple of weeks just deep in my addiction, begging her to come back and promising this, doing all the things that we do in those situations. And I broke down. I really did. And I remember one night, laying in my bed. My wife at the time had come while I was at work and taken everything out of the house except for a bed that she left, a mattress she left on the floor in the bedroom, and a couple of, personal items. And I remember, it was 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm out of my mind. I'm laying in the bed, and I've got the music turned up so loud you can hear it halfway down the block. I got all the doors in the house barricaded. On one hand, I'm screaming for help, right? I've got the sad music on the radio throughout the neighborhood. On the other hand, I'm hiding in my addiction, and I'd hung a rope to the ceiling, and I spent hours just crying, staring up at the rope, making, trying to decide how I was going to do this, but being, too much of a coward to do anything about it. And that next day, I was in it, man. I was hurting. And so a few months prior to that, my wife and I had gone to see a marriage counselor. And of course it didn't work because I lied, about everything. And I called him up and I said, "Man, here's what's going on. I need some help. I got some thoughts going on in my head right now that are pretty scary." And so he saw me immediately that day. And he made some time in his schedule for me. And I went and saw him. And he said, "Well, tell me what's going on." And I got about 3 minutes into explaining to him what was going on. And he stopped me and he just said, "Man," he goes, because I feel the hurt and the pain in your voice. He goes, but this is not what I do. You know, I'm a marriage counselor. He's like, but I know somebody. I know somebody who's just right for you. And he gave me this, the phone number to this place called Bridge to Recovery. This guy, Mike Box, Dr. Mike Box now. And I went and saw them that same day. And I'm sitting there with him, and I'm telling him all the stuff that's going on. And he stops me and he goes, look, man, he goes, this is not my job to tell you what's going on. He goes, but I just want to ask you a couple of questions. And we kind of went through these series of questions, and the common denominator in every one of these questions was drugs and alcohol. And he looked at me and he said, you think you might have a problem? And I said, no. I mean, somebody would have told me, you know. And he said, okay. He said, I got an idea. I want you to go to an AA meeting tonight. There's one. He knew where I lived. He's like, there's one a block from your house. I want you to go there. Again, just another way I know that God was like there with me, because we bought a house a block from like the biggest group of AA, the biggest AA group in the entire state of Mississippi, right? And I had spent 3 years living there thinking this was like some sort of clubhouse for like business. I had no idea. I would just see these people filing out of this building every night. And so I showed up there in a 3-piece suit because I didn't want any of those people to think that I was like them. And I mean, that's the absurdity of this disease, is that by putting on a 3-piece suit, in my mind, of course, I'm going to look all business professional. I'm going to look like the corporate executive that I was. So I couldn't possibly be one of them. And I went to this thing, and it took about 20 minutes. I mean, they were reading the preamble and the 12 steps, and I was just like, wow, this, what? Like this, that sounds like what I'm going through. It just didn't make sense to me, but it made sense to me. And then, 2 or 3 people shared, and I was like, holy crap. This is me. This is it. This is the deal. And I was on fire from that. I went to therapy the next day, and I went to therapy the next day and the next day. And then it was Friday, so he was like, come back and see me on Monday. And I came back on Monday, and I went back on Tuesday, and he was like, look, man, he goes, because I would just go to these therapy sessions, and I would just spew all of this garbage of my life out on this man's lap. And he goes, look, man, I'll keep taking your money, and you can keep coming in here and telling me all the things that went wrong in your life, or we can get into the solution. And I was like, well, what's the solution? He was like, you need a program of recovery. I said, okay. He goes, I want you to go home and think about that. And I thought about it, and I got home, and I'm scrolling, like we do on our phones, and a rehab popped up on my phone. I said, well, that's probably what I need to do. And I called the guy on the number, and it was kind of one of those rehab recruiters, right? They match your insurance with the treatment centers that work for you. And he set me up with the Treehouse. And I went to therapy the next day. I told my therapist what I was doing. And he was like, all right, well, let's get you there tomorrow then. And I was like, whoa, hold on a second. I really did have to get some things organized in my life. But really, I kind of wanted to have a couple more hoorahs, And, a couple of days later, I found myself walking into the doors of the Treehouse. And, I just remember falling to my knees, partly out of exhaustion, partly out of relief, because the couple of guys I had met in AA so far, my therapist all told me that from the moment I walk in those doors, that if I didn't want to, I never had to live that way again. And it was the most cathartic release I've ever experienced in my life, feeling like all of a sudden, and nobody had done anything, I hadn't received any treatment or anything, but just walking in the doors, the act of surrendering just was the most unreal release I had ever experienced in my life. And, the rest is kind of history, but, it was a powerful moment, and it was the by the grace of God, you know what I mean. It was the first and only time I've ever, um, had the need to go to treatment. I feel like um, at some point at treatment, I felt like I had been given this opportunity to second life for a reason. Um, I thought it might be to work in the field, but that was kind of a pattern I'd always had my whole life, was just these really grandiose thoughts and having no idea how to get there. And so I always just kind of focused on the process and put those things off to the side. And, like I said, I was blessed that I had an amazing treatment center. And then, in the treatment center, I had amazing people. And they told me, this is what you need to do. This will give you the best chance at the outcome that you want. And so I did what they said. I went to outpatient. I was an outpatient for a year. I went to sober living, and I was in sober living for a year. I went to a meeting every single day, sometimes two, every single day. And I went from making ridiculous, life-changing money as an executive for a hotel company to sweeping floors in a manufacturing plant because my sponsor told me I needed a job that was humble and would just provide me enough money to pay my bills. And so, I swept floors in a manufacturing plant in the dead of summer in Mississippi, no air conditioning. I did that for a year, because that's what they told me to do. I sometimes I think back and I wonder, well, what if I hadn't have gotten into that outpatient center? Or what if I hadn't have gotten into that sober living? Or what if I hadn't gotten that job? Or what if I hadn't have gotten that sponsor? And it reminds me that, that at every step of the turn, God had my back. He was putting me in the situation to learn and to grow and to build my sobriety. And, I've been very fortunate in the fact that, 1 month from today, as long as the creek don't rise, I'm going to celebrate 8 years of sobriety. And, I'm married. I got 2 boys, 2 beautiful, rambunctious, terroristic style
Yeah.
children who,
Right.
and I got a life that, I'm not the richest man on the planet. I'm not the poorest man on the planet, but, I got people who care and love and trust and respect me. And it's hard to ask for much more than that.
Well, that's a good overview of your journey and
Mm-hmm.
how you've kind of got to where you are now. Now I want to break it down and get into it a little deeper, one chunk at a time. So, what were some early warning signs that you had an addiction that you were ignoring?
Well, I kept getting into trouble at work, right? And I kept making the same mistakes over and over. I would, before a big meeting, I would find an excuse to go out and just get absolutely tore down and, not go to bed till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, knowing I got an 8 a.m. meeting. And then if I got up on time and if I got to the meeting on time, I smell like I walked straight out of a bar, cigarettes, booze. I was never prepared for these types of things. I was getting into legal troubles, right? And these are all, 32 arrests, Dalton, from the time I was 24 years old till I was 37 years old. Probation violations, driving unsuspended, DUIs, uh, things that a normal person would have happen to them once and just simply go, well, I need to make a course correction here. My life is going off the rails. But I would continuously do this and repeat these same behaviors year after year after year after year after year. And any normal person, any person without the disease of addiction, would be able to stop themselves and go, hold on a second, something's going on here. I couldn't see it. I honestly believed that there was some sort of curse against me, that the world and everyone in it was just out to get me. I thought I was so important and significant to the world that there was this grand conspiracy to thwart any efforts that I had at being successful or happy in life. And I believed that to my bone. It's insanity.
And it's insanity. Exactly. You know, that's that's a lot of times. That's a lot of tickets. That's a lot of jail. And it's like you keep on doing life because you have the disease that tells you don't have a disease.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a guy in class yesterday say we're the only people with an allergy who go back to that substance. He said, people with a peanut allergy, you ain't got to try to keep them away from peanuts. They
No.
don't want any. People with a fish allergy, you don't got to try to keep them away. They don't want any. But we
Mm-hmm.
have that allergy, that alcohol, drug, whatever it may be, and our allergy when it gets set off, it just wants more. We know it's
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
damage to us, but we keep going back.
It's the craziest thing, man. You know, at least for me, right, is I didn't even know I had this allergy, right? It provided this level of ignorance, willing ignorance, that didn't allow me to see. And, in every other facet of my life, I could be extremely talented at it, right? It, and I could notice problems, and that's the other part of it, right? I could see all your problems, right? I can remember a couple of times telling my drinking buddies, you might have a drinking problem.
Right.
But the but the thought never crossed my mind. I mean,
Right. It's always them.
hmm
It's always easier to look at the log in your brother's eye than look at the speck in your own eye, right?
man, I tell you, it is. And that's not that didn't stop for me when I got sober, right? I mean, I found myself throughout the years, you know, taking other people's inventory, or trying to, I wanted to help somebody so badly that I needed to tell them about themselves, and it's something I work on, still to this day. I mean, I love to take my wife's inventory. It's one of my favorite things to do, and she doesn't generally take to it too well when I do that.
Right.
So,
Yeah. 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 You gotta be careful on that.
mm, I'm telling you.
How did your understanding of addiction change when you first went to rehab? When you were sitting in the groups, when you were visiting with peers? How did your understanding of addiction really change?
But Dalton, I really didn't have a view or understanding of it before I went to treatment. I mean, the only thing I knew about alcoholics was that they had to go to these meetings in these smoke-filled rooms, right? And um, I didn't really know much else. I didn't even understand what addiction was. And so, the foundation of what I knew about addiction came from, my inpatient treatment center, right? Came from the treehouse. And I'm very fortunate that the therapist I had there, um, was somebody who viewed addiction from a very kind of scientific lens. And, you know, I learned very early uh, that this disease could be kind of arrested momentarily, but then once I put that drink or drug into my body, the ability to stop or slow down that was non-existent, right? And I remember a few months before I went into treatment, I went to this wedding with my wife at the time, and the wedding was early, kind of in the afternoon, and by 7, 8 o'clock, the reception was over, and by 9 o'clock, almost everybody was in bed. And I just remember going around in the dark, going through all the. We were at this big RV campground kind of thing. Everybody was camping or in cabins or in RVs. I remember just going around and getting all the beers out of the coolers and bringing them over to my cooler to make sure I had enough beer to get me to the place where I could go to sleep. And once my therapist told me about this inability to arrest or slow down my drinking, I thought of that, and it just clicked for me. But you know, the main point was that I learned it was a disease, and that I can't do anything about how or why or what I got the disease, but I did have a decision. I did have a say-so in how I managed my disease. And that's really all I needed to know, right? I think the Treehouse, one of the things they did for me was they continued to reinforce this idea that it doesn't matter who you were, what you did in the past. You have an opportunity. You've been given this opportunity to wipe the slate clean and start from scratch. And they hammered into me that very few people get that opportunity. And I believed it so deeply that if I just told the truth, was completely honest about everything I had done and all the lies I had made, and I cleaned out the wreckage of the past, that one day at a time I could stay sober. And I just believed it. And I was very lucky, and I think I remember hearing you tell a very similar story, that through your faith and through going to treatment and getting some help, that you learned that you could wipe the slate clean, that you could ask God for forgiveness, and you would be born again. And although I wasn't quite ready to jump on that train in that moment, you could make the connection, right? That you were given an opportunity to be pure again, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I don't think you had been sober that long when I met you, Dalton. I think maybe you'd been sober 3 years.
Yeah, probably.
How long have you been sober now?
Now it is, let's see, 11 years. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think so. And it was so evident in you, man. It was the program of recovery, and obviously your faith. I think addicts and alcoholics are really in tune to BS,
Definitely.
And
Well, because we're so
yeah,
good at it.
yeah. I mean, absolutely the consummate con man, right? And although again, I wasn't quite ready to believe what you believed in the way you believed it. There was no BS about you. Everything was authentic, and I don't remember. I'm sure there probably was people that worked there that maybe weren't as authentic, but I think that was another big thing for me, is that I never felt like anything anybody was telling me at that treatment center, any of the people, right? The woman who's currently your clinical director, these weren't people that were regurgitating BS that they read out of some handbook. This was like the real deal lived thing, and it was a powerful, it was a very powerful intrinsic kind of feeling to look at people across from you who genuinely and deeply believed in what they were doing.
Right.
And I wanted that, man. I wanted to be authentic. I didn't know what that meant.
Well, I appreciate that, man. That's high praise, and uh, we don't work in this field just so people come along and pat us on the back. But it feels good when people do. So I appreciate you saying that. And I tell my people all the time, there's some things that a book can't teach you. Um, some things you got to learn down in the trenches. Some things you got to learn from lived experience. And as somebody in recovery, it's just so much easier to connect on a deeper level with your clients and have them actually listen to you when they know that you're not just regurgitating some stuff out of a textbook. Um, Now, I'm not saying don't go learn and don't go study. Everybody needs that. Um, but it it also, it's just like an added bonus when it comes from lived experience and you got that study knowledge. It's just,
Hmm.
it's like the dynamic duo.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, in my field, there are a lot of roadblocks in the field of clinical psychology for people in recovery. There's a large group of academics who believe that those of us with lived experience won't be able to be objective in the field of scientific research. And you are seeing it more and more every day, every year. People like me breaking through and showing that, of course, we can be objective. Our lived experience is an additive. It's not a negative.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
and you're seeing the academic and scientific field kind of turn that way, which is it's pretty reassuring. But um, you know, that's tough. The world out there is tough in general.
It's gonna get tougher. Um, Another thing that I constantly am teaching and preaching on is to keep doing the things that you start doing in treatment that are keeping you in a good
Mm.
headspace and keeping you sober. So, can you speak about keeping routines or structure in your life post treatment?
Man, it's hard. It's hard. It's been my experience that the better my life gets, the less I want to hold on to those basic principles. And you would think that it would be the opposite, right? That the greater your life got, the more you would be committed to those basic ideals. But life gets too big sometimes, right? I, as a human being, right? The bigger my life gets, the fuller my life gets, the farther I get from the depths of sorrow that I felt March 3rd, 2017, the easier it is for me to seem to let go of those ideals. And I heard a speaker at an AA conference about 5 years ago say this, that um, when I start seeing myself undo the steps backwards, I start unworking the steps from 12 to 1. When I get down to about like step 10 or step 9, I start to get really concerned. I should have been concerned from the beginning. And, that's been true for me as well. And when I feel my life start to become, when I become restless, irritable, discontent, or I start to feel like my life is becoming more and more unmanageable, I have to go back and look at the fundamentals and how I've gotten away from something as simple as falling to my knees every morning and every night. I remember being in treatment. I remember before I went to treatment, my therapist said, hey, do you pray? Do you believe in God? And I was like, there's times in my life where I did, and I'll be honest. I want to be completely honest, right? Because you're telling me I got to be honest. I don't know. And he said, all right, well, how about this? He goes, how about every morning before as soon as you get out of bed, you just fall to your knees and you just tell God that. You say, look, man, I don't know if you're out there. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know what I believe. But if you're out there, can you help me stay sober today? That's all I'm asking. And it was the most awkward thing to fall to my knees. And I did everything exactly the way people told me to because I was so scared. And I literally would slide out of bed before I put my socks on or anything. And I said that prayer. And it was the most awkward thing. I got a guy in a bed next to me, detoxing hard off of opiates, man, puking, sweating, and I'm sitting there on my knees like some weirdo. praying to somebody I don't even know if he's out there or not. And but I just did it, and I did it at night. I did the same thing. God, it's me again. Don't know if you're there. Don't know if you're real, but if you are, I need a little help. Uh, and
When did
I
it
watched.
become real? When did it become real to you?
I'd say somewhere between like 3, 4, 5, 6 months sober. Just like the big book tells you, that like um, it'll kind of hit you and go, man, I'm starting to see all these things happen in my life, right? Right around that ninth, 10th step kind of situation. And when that hit me, it made me look at what I was doing. And I started to notice then that my prayers had grown in the sense that I was still saying, God, I don't know if you're out there, but my prayer started to sound more like, God, I just want to thank you for keeping me sober yesterday. I want to thank you for that meeting I went to last night. Man, I really heard this thing. The way I was talking to God didn't really change. Um, but in that moment, once I kind of had that burning bush moment in AA, it forced me to look at my prayer and the way I was, what my daily walk with God looked like. And I'm not someone who can formalize that relationship. It doesn't make sense to me. Um, I just have conversations, right? Because somebody told me in early recovery that it wasn't about the religion, the religiosity, or the church in a box, right? That recovery and faith were about a daily living, walking, talking relationship with God. And in that moment, in that kind of span, that time span, I realized that this thing that I had been seeking, this relationship, it's hard to explain. It had already happened just by the simple act of me falling to my knees every day and saying, I don't know what you're going to do for me today, but if you'll just help me stay sober, that'd be pretty great. And, it just grew, it grew from there. And I heard another AA speaker a couple of years ago say that she said, my relationship with God is always in flux. But God has always grown and gotten bigger as my life has gotten bigger. And that really stuck with me. That, if it was okay if maybe I was mad at God for a couple of days or a week, or, that as long as I stayed in contact and continued to have this dialogue, uh, that things were going to be okay. And, you know, it's true. It's just as true today as it was, almost 8 years ago. Um, and so, my relationship with God and higher power and all that stuff, it changes all the time. Um, but it's always a reflection of how close I'm staying to the sunlight of the Spirit, and that's always true. So, but it's been a ride, man. I tell you, you know, realizing and learning that I don't have to be perfect, and my relationship with God doesn't always have to be perfect to have a relationship with God. That He doesn't
Yeah,
expect me to pray perfectly, so to speak.
I like that. I like that. Good insight. Good breakdown for us. Uh, what do you think's been? I mean, it's hard to put a nail on it, but what do you think's been the most important thing that you have overcome and worked on in your recovery?
Boy, I mean, I came out of rehab understanding that the things I believed, the way I had lived my life, the path I had taken
Hold on, hold on.
wasn't working. You still got me?
You're froze. Yeah, you're froze up right now. Give it a minute to
All right.
catch up.
There you go. Am I back?
All right, yeah. There you are. Yeah.
All right.
Try to be
You
as
know,
still as you can while you.
all right. So, I left rehab understanding that the way I had lived my life, the choices that I had made, the path I had been taking wasn't working. It didn't work for me. It never worked for me, right? And so and I think it was your clinical director, I think she, at one point in one of her groups, said that, if the way you have been leading your life was working, why'd you end up on my couch?
Mm,
And then said, you need to constantly challenge everything you believe. And that really stuck with me, right? Because, I mean, I was the ultimate con artist before I went to treatment, right? Everything about me was a lie or fabricated or exaggerated. I had created this fictitious person. And so I even asked, my therapist about, I don't know, halfway, maybe a little more than halfway through treatment, I said, you think it's possible I'm conning myself in treatment? And, I think I was asking the right questions, right? And so for me, I mean, there's a lot, but I think that is the biggest one, right? For me, is that if I believe something, I have to, and I think I believe it to my core, I need to stop. I have to ask myself why I believe this thing. And I have to run it by some people in my life I really trust and respect to make sure that the way I'm thinking or feeling about something is grounded in fact, in truth, in reality. Um, you know, and this is just as true today as it was all those years, right? I mean, I am prone to conspiracies, right? I still am prone to this idea that people are out to get me, that I'm so important to their lives that they are on a regular basis consumed about thinking about me and how they're going to get me. And so, that's a big one for me, but so much about me has changed, is different today. So, but that's the one that sticks out the most, is kind of confronting, this reality as if it's not really reality. How do you do that? Do you still struggle with that at all?
which part?
With this idea that somebody's out to harm you.
Yeah, I struggle with that in the sense that my inadequacies,
Mm-hmm.
um, and where I am self conscious about things. I got that defense mechanism up all the time, thinking people got something against me or people are trying to get one over on me.
Mm-hmm.
I still struggle with that, but it comes from a place of it. It stems from within.
Mm-hmm.
It's not them. It's
Nope.
they really they got a lot bigger things on their mind than little old Dalton. They ain't worried about
Mm-hmm.
me. But
Nope.
it's because I am not self confident and I got these it's not inadequacies. What's the word I'm looking for? Um
Insecurities.
insecurities. I
Mm-hmm.
got these insecurities, so my insecurities make me think they're talking about me. They want me to do this. They're going to get me.
Mm-hmm.
So the way to defeat that is to work on yourself.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I'm
Some.
confident about myself and I'm confident in my abilities and I'm doing life the best I can, well then if my addicted brain wants to say, yeah, they're plotting on you, okay.
Mm-hmm.
You say whatever you want. I know I'm doing my thing.
And that's where it comes. I mean, that's the defense to that, right? Is I feel like as long as when I'm not doing the right things, when I know deep down in my soul that I'm not living up to the standards, that the ideals that I have for my life, when I'm not living up to the the ideals that my Creator God has set up for me, that's when that creeps up for me. And so
Right.
when I feel that, when I feel like people are out to get me or pull one over on me or whatever a case may be, I I've got to turn my attention away from that and look inward and say, what have I been doing that's causing these insecurities?
Right.
Somebody said, I'm a egomaniac with an inferiority complex, right?
Yeah, I think that was what's his name? Used to be with Bam. Um,
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
him.
Mm-hmm. And but it's not even like you said. It's not about them and what they are or are not doing. That is irrelevant. When I start to feel that way, it's because something inside of me isn't lining up. I've got cognitive dissonance between who I believe I should be and my actual behaviors. I think you're spot on with that, man.
We
And that's
um
the continuing problem of an addict. I think it's one of the things that catches us up a lot of
definitely,
times.
definitely. That's why it's so important. Hey, be working the steps every day. Be doing what I can be doing what I can be doing every day to be in the right state of mind and on the right path. And I'll have no reason to think that people are out to get me. I'll have no reason to feel inadequate. I'll have no reason to feel bad about what I've been doing if you ain't been doing nothing to feel bad about. So
That's
it's
right.
just living in recovery every day, striving to be better, striving to be more. If we're
Mhm.
doing the right thing, the wrong thing takes care of itself.
It really does. It and it feels so simple to say that,
Right.
right? I mean, it feels like you should. It needs to be more profound than that, but it is really just that simple.
Yeah.
If I work my program every day from sun up to sundown, I don't have any time to lie, cheat, steal, and hurt.
Yeah.
Thus, I won't feel guilty about lying, cheating, hurting, or stealing.
It's a simple equation. It's
It's
a
not
simple
that simple.
equation. It's a simple equation, but it is hard to unpack and to follow through with.
Yeah, yeah.
It's it's
That's the
it's
crux of it
definitely
all for sure.
the best and hardest path we ever have to walk down, I believe.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so we usually end these things with a bit of advice. So, what's your bit of advice to somebody out there struggling with their addiction or struggling to believe that they even have a problem right now?
Yeah, I mean that's the tough one, right? It's what scientists and uh, recovery experts and therapists and have been. That's the question we've all been trying to solve since we learned about this disease of addiction, right? But what I tell people, and I go back to this all the time, and people sometimes say, "Oh, I'm an AA big book thumper" when I say things like this. But the fact of the matter is it's really laid out for us in the preamble, right? It says, "Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path." And surrender is the only answer. And it sounds terrible, this idea, right? Because as people, we believe we control our own destinies, that if we work hard, if we do this, if we do that, we are the masters of our own universe. So this
Hmm.
idea to surrender feels demoralizing. It feels humiliating. It feels ridiculous. Um, and I tell you this, I've never been more at peace in my life than in the moments where I completely surrender my life to a higher power. And, I call that person God and Jesus and my, my personal walk in faith. But I've never heard somebody come into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or any of the Anonymouses that I've been to over the years. I've never heard somebody walk into one of those meetings and say, I worked the steps perfectly and I still relapsed. I've never heard anybody say that. I think they might say it to me one-on-one in private, but when they're confronted with the reality of their addiction and their disease, they're able to look and go, well, I'll be honest with you, I just couldn't surrender to a higher power. But, everything else I did perfectly. Well, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where I said, I have the ability every day to feel like I did the day I walked into the Treehouse Rehab Center. Like pure white as snow, relief, no burdens, right? I have that ability every day. And on the days that I work the 12 steps, I work all 12 steps throughout the course of the day, right? I end my day by taking an inventory and making right the wrongs that, I committed. Those are the days I wake up the next day and feel like I'm unburdened. But it really is, one piece of advice I give to somebody is, at the best of your ability, surrender your life to something, whether it's surrender your life to your rehab program, surrender your life to your outpatient program, surrender your life to whatever it is, whoever it is, whatever entity out there is trying to help you get sober. If you're able to do that, then you have a fighting chance. I just believe truly that rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And that's the one line I give everybody, man, is you have a choice. You have a choice. You don't ever have to live that way again if you want to. But you gotta want it. You got to.
I totally agree. I totally agree. It is a choice, and we have that choice every single day, even 8 and 11 years into it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have that choice in the small and minute things as well. Are we going to get pissed off and hold on to this grudge or this mistake, or are we going to hit that? Are we going to hit that reset button 5 times a day if we have to? But we have a choice. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming
and
on today. Thank you for sharing a bit of your story and a bit of your insight and knowledge. Uh, you've come so far, and you have just totally changed the trajectory of your life because of what you have struggled with, and now getting into a space where you can help others with that is just, it's amazing, man.
yeah, well, it started with guys and gals. Uh, you guys call yourself the Familia, right? I mean, uh, those types of things don't happen to people like me without people like you, people like Vinny, the rest of your crew that you guys have been through a lot over the years, and every day I see. I mean, I follow all of you guys on social media, and you guys always just show up every day. Just show up, and there's this isn't to you know to you know to mount praise on anybody or any of those types of things. I mean, uh, but there are literally hundreds of people, thousands of people that have been impacted, affected, the course of their lives changed, right? Just because of the work that you guys do, and it's an honor to be on this podcast. I'll be honest with you. For me, it feels like this full thing's coming full circle, and it helps me remember where I came from, because it's easy these days, man. Wife, kids, job, college, PhD programs, all this stuff going on. It's easy, man. It's so easy to forget.
Right.
So I appreciate you helping me stay right sized, as the big book would say, right? to stay grounded. I appreciate that. I appreciate the work you guys are still out there doing, man. It's um, I think with all that's going on in the world today, it's easy to forget that we have an epidemic, a disease of addiction out there taking the lives of 30,000 plus Americans every single year, and we're not as trendy as we once were. The disease of addiction isn't the trendiest disease out there in the public eye today, and so I thank you guys for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, no problem, man. Again, appreciate it, and we'll see y'all on the next one.